Welcome back to my podcast, Grief the Real Talk. Today I'm talking about people who exit our lives after our great loss, when we're left in the lurch by people we need most in our time of great grief. Abandonment in our time of need, and relationship changes. Where did everybody go? The whys about this have stunned me as to why people who have been in our lives for a long or lifetime suddenly disappear when one half of the couple is no longer. How puzzling it is to find that in our deepest hour of need, people leave. And I'm not just talking about friends, but family too. Oh, I can give you first-hand examples galore, sadly. And from some of the many articles and comments I've read in grief groups on the topic, also sadly, my situation is not unique. A bit incomprehensible, but no less not unique. Why do friends and family disappear? Are they concerned, but perhaps they're afraid that they don't know what to say or how to be around us? Are they worried we might want to talk about our loved one and they are uncomfortable because they don't know how to behave around us? Or do they really have no interest in our feelings? Is it possible we just learn a hard lesson when tragedy strikes that some people in our lives may just not give a damn about us? Because that's how it appears to me with some people after losing my husband. Were they perhaps pissed at us about something else they'd been harboring but couldn't put away their selfish disgruntlements despite our great loss? Or maybe something I also discovered after losing my husband. Some so-called couple friends become jealous, worried that us widows or widowers may be running for their husbands or wives. Or maybe odd numbers just aren't any fun. Whatever the logic, where has compassion gone? Losing a spouse and finding some of our own family have gone missing, unconcerned for our emotional welfare enough to not even pick up a phone or ask how we are doing, or paying us a visit to give us a temporary lift out of our grief, just vanishing into the ethers and becoming non-existent, is a real thing. These actions just add grief to our grief. It's a glaring reckoning that irked my grief. We need to talk about our lost loved ones so we can keep them near and alive in our hearts. Friends, don't be afraid to come near us. We won't bite. We're too busy living our grief to think about snatching your husbands or wives. We don't need you to tippy-toe around us in fear of the mention of our loved one because you feel uncomfortable around our tears. It's essential we find our tribe of people when we are grieving. Many have surmised that standing too close to someone who has lost the love of their life makes them feel they, too, are very too close to death, making them feel uncomfortable because death is not something they want to think about. Instead, they tend to pull away. Many of us undoubtedly will discover just who has been there for us after our loss, some expected and some not, which is rather sobering. I will ascertain. Many who were in my circles prior to my loss have disappeared from my life. I was shocked to read and hear this from quite a few other survivors, but it's true, which brings me back to my story of observation about another plausible reason some people exit away from us when we become one from a couple. Some say they distance themselves from us now that we are no longer a couple, thinking they don't want to put us, the griever, in an uncomfortable position by inviting us around because they don't want us to feel the loneliness of being a single. I think that's evasive and lame. I have no problem feeling lonely when I'm by myself. I don't need friends to make me feel that way when I'm with them. Some people just don't know how to be around us from two to a solo. I'm not sure about the various reasons why people disappear on us, but I do know that not being afraid to talk to us would most definitely be a better solution for both parties. The griever would feel better at ease not having to wonder and deal with abandonment issues besides the grief they're already living, and having a conversation instead of avoidance may help cement a relationship with us instead of severing it. My husband and I spent a few winter months down in Mexico for the last 6 years. We stayed in the same condo annually and had made friends with quite a few regular renters over the years. In my deep, dark grief moments, I thought about how gloomy and cold the winter here would be, the first winter alone without him. I battled with myself about if I could feel comfortable enough going back there without my husband. Knowing we had friends there and that I'd have company and be able to go out and mingle with them, I thought it was a good thing to get myself out of the cold and dark and go somewhere warm and familiar. Only when I got there, I found those whom I thought were friends weren't really any longer, once I became a single. I was ignored and no longer part of their circles. I eventually made some fantastic, real new friends about 2 weeks into the trip, and they invited me everywhere. They were all couples. We were 3, 5, and sometimes 7 together. Real honest friendships were formed with both husbands and wives, and I never felt like a 3rd, 5th, or 7th wheel when around them. One of those friends was John. When we first met and were chatting in the pool, we discovered we were both from Toronto. He asked where my husband was, and I filled him in. I also filled him in about the people who were supposed to be my friends there and abandoned ship. He told me that the females were probably jealous of me and pulled away. I would never even have imagined that, but I'd heard that from others. It's a fact. There are people with insecurities, and if it's the case that the female now feels threatened having a single woman hanging around, then we are left to find new friends, who are obviously a bit more secure in their relationships. I was lucky to be able to meet some new and terrific people after all that. This is just one example of what I personally experienced when I suddenly became one from two. Gratefully, I had a great time with my new friends who reminded me how to laugh again, and I never gave the time of day to the fair weather friends again. Many people don't know how to behave around grieving people. Many prefer to disappear or dodge out of the scenery with excuses and eventually fade out of our lives. Some may have been unsure of what's expected of them, while others may feel threatened, or quite possibly we discover that it was only our lost spouse they wanted the friendship with. Or that if they can't do couple things with us anymore, they discard us. People will be people, and we can't change them, but when it comes to being abandoned by family and them not supporting us in our time of need, I learned to leave them outside my life, where they made it quite apparent they wished to remain. Sometimes we just have to take the message for what it is and consider it a learned lesson in moving on with our lives. Tragedy will always show us who is left standing at the plate for us. I'm grateful for my best and close friends now in my small circle. I'm grateful for the many times they sit and listen to my stories about my husband. He was loved by all my close friends, so they never mind hearing me talk about him or waiting for me to recompose myself after an impromptu tear fest. These are the people my heart feels at peace with when I'm around them. We need to find our tribe. We don't need words most times. We need ears and hugs. We want and need to feel comfort being with familiar people in our life, especially people who knew and loved the person we're grieving, people who know of what we speak, and people who will give us a hug, which is much needed in our time of aloneness. Those are our people, the ones who love us unconditionally. Shame on those who abandon us in our time of need. May they never know how it feels to lose the love of their life and how it feels to have their hearts ripped out, or what it feels like to live each day without them. The aftermath of death and the loss become quite revealing and often leaves messy interactions in its wake. When our world goes dark, the people who remain are our tribe. Maya Angelou once said, "When people show you who they are, believe them." Anne Lamott also said, "If people wanted us to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better." Truest words. I am grateful for the small, tight tribe I now have and the new compassionate friends I have gained. Be grateful that despite the sadness of realizing that there are just some of us who are self-absorbed and have shown no empathy, that after showing us who they are, we find out where we stand and we can adjust our sails and commune with those who show their love and support. As grievers, we have no room in our hearts or lives left for toxic or fair-weathered relationships. In my next episode, I'll talk about condolences and why people feel stuck when confronting us grievers, fearing they don't know what to say.